Mike. I appreciate it as always. You know, you get Entre's definitely definitely a rock star platform, and you know, you're doing wonders for it. So thank you for getting us all together. So yeah, without you know, further ado, I just want to introduce myself. I'm one of the co-founders of Cath Advisory Group. Alex and I decided to form Cath Advisory Group with you know, with the mind of the mom and pop restaurants out there that maybe need a little guidance and need a little advising, maybe some management consulting, maybe on their staff training. You know, the goal of getting this Cath Advisory Group together is to be a boutique advisory firm for restaurants out there, right? We want to make it so that there's a one-stop shop for restaurateurs to go if they need help with, like I said, management consulting, staff training, menu analysis, maybe redesigning of the restaurant, social media marketing, catastrophes such as COVID-19. Hey, what do we do now? Something like that. You know, we want to give these restaurateurs an outlet to go to. You know, basically our mission statement is just to take poor and average performing restaurants and make them fierce competitors in the food and beverage industry. It's a brutal industry, as Terence can probably attest to later on, but also there's a lot of opportunity as well if you do it right. So I guess I'll put it over to Alex, just let him tell you about himself for maybe a minute or two, and we'll move on to Terence.
Hi, everyone. Alex Ambrose, co-founder of Cath Advisory Group. I'm based out of Long Island, New York. As my partner Will already said, yes, we are a boutique advisory group trying to help the mom and pops. Just really looking, especially again in the times of COVID-19, how to really just make sure that the guest experience is where it needs to be. I'm sure a lot of restaurateurs could attest to that during this time. You know, it's tough. We've seen a lot of the other restaurants kind of go out of business. So what is going to work best for us, and it's going to keep the business coming in, and you know, just for now and in the future. So thank you all for joining in, and we're excited to be here.
Okay, great. Hey, Terence, if you want to spend a minute or two, tell us about your history and why you got into the restaurant industry.
My name is Terence Tubridy, born and raised New Yorker. My company is IGC Hospitality. We are a hospitality company that at one time managed and owned 14 places in the New York area, mostly Manhattan, mostly in hotels. We were hotel and real estate advisors. We're tech investors. We're early investors in 7 Rooms platform, as well as Bebot, another, I'm sure Alex is aware of Bebot. And right now we're actually developing and planning on opening up a hotel in my home neighborhood of Rockaway Beach, the Rockaway Hotel. So you can imagine in this current climate, you know, we're super excited about it and hope that vaccine is coming soon. So excited to be here.
Thanks, Terence. Yeah, we're gonna steer a lot of questions your way, so get prepared. We got a lot of good questions out there for all these listeners. And feel free, as you're listening too, if you have questions, if you want to answer some of our kind of trigger questions, feel free to chime in. So we're eager to hear from multiple restaurants and bars, you name it, hospitality industry folks out there. If you chime in and help us all out with just understanding what's going on out there across the country, let us know. And also, Alex Canter, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Ordermark, right? And great company, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks for having me also. So Alex Canter, CEO and co-founder of Ordermark, also 4th generation of Canter's Deli, which is a Jewish deli here in Los Angeles, where I live. I was born and raised in the family business and was responsible for adapting it for the next generation, bringing Canters into the 21st century, and implementing all the technology just like my dad and my grandpa had done before. And I ended up signing up all these delivery apps, about 14 of them. Each one brought incremental revenue into the business. But we had 9 tablets, 2 laptops, and a fax machine to manage all those incoming orders. And it was a disaster and a train wreck for the restaurant. and the staff hated me. So I wanted to take a step back and reimagine the whole online ordering experience from scratch in a restaurant, and started Ordermark to give restaurants a simple way to connect all these different systems. We've grown the company over the last 3.5 years to now work with over 5,000 different restaurants across the country, from mom and pops to large chains and everything in between. And we have about 100 employees now, and have raised about 30 million in VC capital to continue to power and grow the future of the delivery industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic, man. You're doing wonders, and this is the time for you to shine too. So hats off on that. We'll also have some questions. Hopefully, you can elaborate on for us as well. And share with the folks out there that are listening. So thanks again. So yeah, basically we're gonna break this webinar down into a couple major kind of bullet points, right? We're gonna focus on takeout first. We're gonna have some takeout questions, some Q&A, how restaurants are managing their takeout business in this time, and then we're gonna focus on what they're doing to maximize the experience that their diners have with outside and indoor dining. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, how restaurants may have to modify their menus, or they've had to modify their menus due to the virus, and whether it be due to keeping costs low or just supply and demand. And then obviously too, a topic that some of us may or may not want to talk about, but staffing, right? Some of us may be on the other end where, hey, maybe some listeners out there, hey, unfortunately we laid off, right, due to the virus, but we're going to talk about that and the positive things that can come out of that as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about technology and how that's going to play a crucial role, or it does play a crucial role as we see maybe phase 2 or 3 or 4, et cetera, of the virus come out there. And then we'll talk about how the staff has to adapt to this new environment, whether they have to put on gloves, face masks, hazmat suits, whatever it may be, right? How we're still being personable with the consumers, right, with our diners, because that's ultimately how we're going to stay in business. And any predictions for the future? What's in store for the winter? What's in store for the fall? How are we doing that? Right now, it's a little easier to plan for because we can have diners outside, we can have diners indoors, right? But now we're going to have to plan accordingly for the winter. So, one question that we have, we're going to start with the takeout topic here. So, what are some of the ways in which restaurants are focusing on food presentation? As we focus on takeout, when diners are dining into your restaurant, they sit down, they get served a nice plate, nice food presentation. Hopefully the temperature's right, what they ordered, right? Medium rare steaks, medium well steaks, burnt steaks, extra well. How are restaurants out there maximizing the food presentation opportunities out there? Because you put something in a container, the diner takes it home, it gets rattled around a bit, then the diner opens it up. It's that experience that you want. Essentially, you want that diner to still leave you a positive review, maybe, or tell their friends and family that this restaurant's a good place to eat. So I'm interested to hear from some restaurants out there. How are you focusing on that?
So, go ahead, Alex. I'm sure. This isn't rocket science, right? And I think some of the best restaurants, the restaurants that succeeded during quarantine, were the ones that were specific to their culinary target. So Mexican restaurants, Italian. Any of the kits, right? Taco kits worked well. Pizza kits worked well. That got them kind of the marketability of those worked. Cocktail kits. But at the end of the day, what travels well is plastic containers, tins, and just keeping things hot. So it's going to be hi baby. So
good now.
So that I think is it's not a business to build a model off of, for sure. And so it's really just to get you by.
Yeah. Yeah. How about,
I'll give a different view from my perspective. So when we first started doing delivery at my family's restaurant on Eat 24 back in 2008 or 2009, one of the first things that I did was I would package up 20 different items on the menu and drive around in my car for 20 or 30 minutes and then open it up and see how we did. It's not about the food leaving properly, it's about how it arrives. And even if you're putting piping hot French fries or any of these different food items, breakfast items, into the bag and delivering it, it doesn't mean it's going to be a good experience. So you really have to be hands-on with understanding what on your menu is actually going to deliver well. And there's so much technology evolution that's happening in the packaging world right now to keep crispy food crispy and to keep the food to arrive the way that it's intended. And more we're starting to see restaurants sending not just meal kits, but unassembled items. So they're sending all the contents of the ramen and then the broth on the side. So you pour it in yourself so that the noodles don't get overcooked.
Hey, I'm trying to figure out whether Alex, you're done speaking or there's just some static in the background. Thank you for that. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point too, with just doing some tests, right? If you're able to go out there and see what delivers well and what doesn't deliver well. A personal experience I had, not too long ago was, my wife and I ordered dinner for the family. We had maybe 5 or 6 dishes, right? And someone ordered a salad. Right, so if someone orders a salad and they're in styrofoam containers, let's say, now the salad's placed in between 2 hot dishes that are in styrofoam as well, right? So if I get the salad, it comes home, maybe the lettuce is a little warm, wilted a little bit, right? Chicken's now, sat on the lettuce a little too long, and we got to realize that, hey, listen, we're these restaurants out there, they're doing their best to serve you food at home. Right, so there's that thought. Wait, let's not be too critical. Let's not get on social media and say, hey, listen, I got this salad. The lettuce was wilted. The chicken was cold. Hey, listen, folks, you got to realize, right? When the cooks are putting the stuff in the plate, it may look great, right? And then maybe it goes to the front and the hostess stand right until you're ready to pick up. Maybe if you have curbside service, then you got to put it in the car and you drive home. It gets rattled around. You get it at your dinner table. It's not going to look like, that beautiful dish you would get if you were to go to that restaurant and dine in, but at the same time, I think we got to focus a little bit on just, making sure that the temperature when you get this food, when you get home and you eat it, it's up to, code, right? You don't want to, serve stuff that's been sitting out too long, right? There's certain temperatures by when, even restaurants too, right? When you're storing food after you cook it and then you store it, whether buffets did this or not, you have to make sure that you cool down food, rapidly, or you heat up food rapidly during there's different standards out there based on, I guess, where the state you live. But at the end of the day, we have to realize, we're all in this together. So, I hope that a lot of these diners out there are realizing that. I don't know, if how restaurants are experiencing the reviews or whether they're focusing on consumer satisfaction, right? Are they asking for reviews? Hey, listen, if you're happy with your takeout order, if you're happy with our curbside service, please leave us a positive review, because it's still a market, right? We're all in a crazy market now. We're all in it together. There's not one restaurant out there that isn't forced to deal with what's happened due to COVID-19. So we're all on an equal playing field. So, I guess that leads to my next question. What would be some pointers for restaurants out there to kind of, boost that review process and get positive reviews out there? Anybody that wants to
what we did was anybody that was ordering on Grubhub or those third-party platforms, we got their phone number, or we got any information that we could, and we tried to convert them quickly to using our platform. Whether, we'll give you 10% or we'll throw in a cocktail. And then we built a relationship with them. So when we just opened up our rooftop bar, we're inviting them for a sneak peek or welcome back to relaunch or reopening. So I mean, just little things like that. As far as like, silly responses or reviews during quarantine or even leading up to the shutdown, some things just don't deserve responses and some things do. And I think that's a measured approach for an operator. It's one thing, don't pay too much attention to it. Obviously, you want your Google reviews and your Yelp reviews to be high, so your traffic gets up there. And at the end of the day, if your product is good enough, the public will come back. I think what the operation is, quickly pivot to, all right, I don't need as much front of house staff. Let me dedicate it towards delivery, or let me dedicate it towards boots on the ground, and let me shorten my hours of operation. So quickly, we went from being open at 11 a.m., from 10 a.m. to midnight to 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And our payroll quickly went from $3,000, to $15,000 a week to $3,000 a week, and you just manage it as best you can.
To hyperinflate the reviews, we just put in every order that went out the door, we put a little cookie or free dessert and a little note that just talks about how important this order was for us in this moment, and that we're really struggling as a restaurant. Because most people who are ordering from restaurants don't even understand what we're going through. So it's really helpful to just educate them to say, we laid off 90 employees, our whole wait staff and all the busboys and the bartenders and everyone. And we're doing our best to keep our doors open. And this order specifically is helping us do that. So thank you so much for ordering. Feel free to share it on social media. And by the way, here's some free dessert for you.
That's great, Alex. It's just something so small as a simple note like that can work wonders. So that's definitely a good recommendation. If I own a restaurant out there, I would actually take that advice, right? Because folks, it's real easy to do. I mean, it's just, it's sort of like, when you learn about marketing, it's those touches. Every time you touch a consumer, whether it be through your food or through word of mouth, or you're talking to that consumer, or you're advertising, every chance you get, you should be trying to get a positive experience. And, hey, make them aware. Hey, listen, I know you're aware that the coronavirus is out there, right? But here, just to remind you, since it's out there, right, we're going above and beyond to make sure you can enjoy this meal. So that's great. That's great. Thanks for that answer. I love it. I love it. Keep it coming. One experience I want to share is my family and we ordered from a restaurant last night for takeout. We wanted a curbside pickup. I'm not going to name the restaurant, but we wanted curbside pickup. So we looked up the restaurant online just to make sure they did curbside pickup, and Google says curbside pickup. There was a green check mark next to it. So I get on the phone and we order the food, and at the end of the conversation, she said that'll be about 45 minutes. Thank you. And I said, whoa, hold on. I want to pay now. She's like, well, you can pay when you come here and you can come inside and pay. I was like, I want to pay now. She's like, well, you need to come inside. I was like, well, your website, right, or Google, it says curbside pickup. Well, that's not right. So point there is make sure that if obviously, you have a lot of control over your website. You can put whatever you want on it, leave whatever you want out. But when now your business is on Google, if Google isn't giving accurate information of your restaurant, you could lose some consumers due to that. We'll still dine at this restaurant, but still, that wasn't really a good experience for us. I didn't have a mask, so I had to go drive back home to get a mask, and it was just a real big inconvenience. But I would just back to your point, Alex, just communicate. Just consumer relations. Just communicate with your consumers. It's very simple to do, easy to forget.
Well, I just want to point one thing out, though, as an operator, and realizing how many platforms there are, how many things that we have to manage just on a social media or just where all of our menus exist. I mean, it's insane. I feel for mom and pop. I come from a mom and pop. My father owned a restaurant for 35 years. And he can't imagine what we're going through, where it's just simply, you put an ad in the local paper and that's what you hope you got reviewed by Newsday or the Daily News. I mean, so like even building that empathy and compassion, Alex, it's brilliant. And you try to do that and you try to educate the consumer, especially during this time, because there is so much empathy and compassion for our industry right now. But as an operator, I think what we're realizing is that maybe it's a little much for how do we just simplify this even more so. It is almost just, it's great to have all this data but what are we really doing with it at the end of the day?
Good point. Hey, Mike, do we have any, I see you up there, are you listening? Do we have any interesting questions coming up? We want to maybe address some of these questions that folks are asking?
Yeah, I think there's nothing that stands out to me just yet that is super relevant. I kind of want to save a lot of them for the end so we can get through some of these. I mean, there's so many interesting topics that we're going to be getting into. So I don't see anything just
leave anybody in the dust.
Yeah, I mean, look, if and some people came on a little bit late too. So if you guys have questions, over topics or anything that you guys want, whether you own a restaurant or you're in the food industry, I've seen a lot of people that either have startups or they're actually directly in this stuff. Please ask questions and I'll keep track of it. If there's anything that I see that's relevant for what you guys are talking about at the time, I might bring it up, but I'll mostly just save everything to the end so that we can get through the rest of the topics that we've laid out.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so we talked a lot about takeout and what a couple of restaurants are doing out there to make sure they maximize that consumer experience. It's a brutal industry right now. I guess the restaurant industry has always been brutal, but COVID-19 only made it worse, right? Let's move on to outside and indoor dining. This is highly contested by not only consumers but by restaurateurs. Over here in Pittsburgh, we had a couple of, I'd say, what do we call them, renegade restaurants that were refusing to abide by the law, right? And as a result, they got called out on the local news. It's unfortunate. You have your belief system, but when your state mandates certain procedures are in place and you don't follow those, it just hurts your restaurant. So I'm interested to hear, what are some of the maybe success stories and some of the maybe horror stories of putting all your dining outside when historically it's been indoors. Anybody have any interesting stories to tell?
I think before the planning leading up to it was should we do concession style and let people try to practice social distancing? Should we, what are people yearning for? Or you're asking what the future of restaurants are. And most people are just wishing or wanting to be served. And so what's the practice what can we do right away? Well, we could hire back as many people as we can using the technology. All right, let's make sure we hire, we buy more POS systems that let's implement our ordering by the table. Let's figure out how we could do this with a limited amount of staff, but also still bring back that hospitality and style service that people are accustomed to and potentially in New York. So we did that, and we socially distanced, and we did a full menu. We didn't do disposables except for silverware. And for the most part, it's been very well received. We've been very busy. In Manhattan, it's been a little bit slow to pick up, obviously, because Manhattan's been a little bit, it's been very slow. But I got to be honest with you, we're not the mask police, but our government is making us become the mask police. I'm getting actually text messages right now that the State Liquor Authority is in the neighborhood right now for the third night in a row, hitting local establishments. And these fines are not, they're heavy. and they're pulling, Governor Cuomo is being quite strict about it. And it's unfortunate because, yeah, there are some cowboys that are taking advantage, but then for the good operators, the operators that are kind of running this the right way, we had an SLA inspector tell us that he saw a woman with her mask like this, and then that's a warning for us. So we got one strike, and out of 400, potentially it's a big place. It's 300 people there, spread out over 15,000 square feet. One person with a mask like this, come on, what are we doing? So that's where they're going to lose us as far as like operators. And then at the same time, New York City gave us 48 hours, literally 48 hours to set up a outdoor dining plan in New York. So, the people that have the ability to do that did it. But they had months and months of planning to set this up, and it's unfortunate that our government kind of doesn't support small businesses the way it should, and it's just the way it is. I mean, we're just being very slow in opening up indoor dining. Even if we were allowed to open indoor dining in New York City, we're not allowed to. In Long Island, they are. Go figure. But even if we were allowed to, I don't know if we would. And then at the same time, I just think it's the long game. Any operator that's thinking about reopening, it's cash is king. Reserve your cash for the long game. And Charlie boy, what's up, pal? And so it's just, we got to make it to Q2 of next year. That's November 5th. I know that's the joke. But I think it's going to be Q1 or Q2 of next year before we're seeing any type of resolve here. I hope.
Yeah. So I guess even in Manhattan too, I guess it's true. Tell me, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is they're actually, I heard they're closing down streets, so restaurants can actually dine out in the street. How is that working out? I mean, have you seen? I know historically you can't drive to a lot of places historically in Manhattan, right, without having to pay on the lake for parking or park a mile away. But now that they're closing off streets, right, now cars can't get through, traffic can't get through. Are you taking, do your establishments take advantage of that? Are you able to dine out in these places that they cordon off for this?
Yeah, one of our places is directly on Park Avenue and 39th Street. They didn't shut down Park Avenue, but we are on the street there. And there's a ton of places that are taking advantage of it. Obviously, on social media, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So it's really the perspective on where you stand on COVID and how your perception of this and how you kind of want to manage it, and the risk you want to take. So I think it's great that New York City has allowed this and kind of loosened the grip as far as like outdoor dining goes, because it's very structured and it's nice having people need, and I believe that we're providing, as far as restaurateurs go in this country, we're providing a great service as far as giving people the mental break that they need and the mental release on the working side, on the employee side, and also just on the service side. And if it wasn't here, we'd be having even more problems, social justice problems, even more so. So it's just, I think, yeah.
I'll
Go ahead.
comment on that. So first of all, most restaurants don't even have the luxury of offering outdoor dining, which is unfortunate. If you do, awesome, take advantage of it. But one of the things that you mentioned that really struck with me is the fact that all of this happened overnight, and like the regulations that are putting out. Here in LA, they told us effective immediately tonight, all restaurants need to shut down their dining rooms. I can't tell you how much food waste there was from restaurants that were prepared to do full service and had hours notice before this change went into effect, and then turning it on and off and on and off. It's like every single time it's like we just lost tens of thousands of dollars again in this situation. And it is ridiculous that they're not giving more heads up notice. And one of the biggest challenges and ways that I think we're being failed as an industry by the government is really the programs for the staff. I think this is something that a lot of restaurants are talking about right now, that it's hard to bring back their employees when they're making more money at home, sitting on the couch from unemployment benefits, rather than risking their lives in a business where people are coming in with no masks on sometimes. And I know for the at-risk population, the employees that are 50, 60 and older, asking them to come in every day and be in this environment, like I'm glad that they're being very strict with the regulations and safety measures. The last thing you want to see is something bad happen to one of your employees, whether you feel it's the right thing or the wrong thing. Like I think we don't want to be on the other end of the spectrum here either, and be responsible for the employees of our businesses. And I think when you think about pre-COVID, already there was an oversaturated restaurant market, 800,000 brick and mortar restaurant businesses in the US, where it was already nearly impossible to have a successful restaurant business. Most restaurants fail in the first year or two. And even if you have great food and a great experience and a great offering, it's still just so difficult with the margins that we operate with. So for something like this to come in and impact foot traffic in the way that it's impacting it, and the long-term effects of it, it's just, there will be a bloodbath in this restaurant industry. And it's honestly a right sizing that will hopefully create a better future for the restaurants that are in it and left at the end. But it's going to be a really sad next couple of years. PPP was a shot in the arm for a lot of restaurants. It was a let's survive the next couple of months. And for those that got it, it was certainly helpful. And I'm fully recommending that you seriously, I'm not saying this because I come from the delivery world and Ordermark, but if you're not looking at delivery as the future of your restaurant, I don't know what you're doing right now, because that is where so much of the order volume is shifting. Digital ordering is continuing to increase at record paces, and the shift that was supposed to happen over the next 10 years is happening in 2 months. And even coming out of this, even if in 2 years from now everyone's vaccinated and restaurants are opening up again, so many people have adjusted to this new form of ordering and working from home. And pre-COVID, the ordering demographic on these platforms was really 18 to 35-year-olds, and that has expanded significantly in the last couple of months. Those customers are not going away after this is done. They're used to ordering it in this way now. Their order information saved, their credit card information's there, their eating preferences are already saved, their order history, all of that makes it so easy that they can open up an app and click a button. My grandpa is now ordering on DoorDash, and he's a power user because he can't go anywhere. And he said, I'm never going to Subway again if I can order it on my DoorDash app. And that mentality is why you have to kind of think about going all in with delivery, no matter what you end up coming out of this with. And one of the biggest ways in which restaurants are capitalizing on that, especially restaurants that were not set up for delivery, is to consider running an additional concept or virtual restaurant brand, or 10 virtual restaurant brands out of your same existing kitchen. There's this new term that's evolved in the industry called host kitchens. This is a restaurant that is not a ghost kitchen. It's not a commissary kitchen. It's literally Baja Fresh running multiple concepts out of their same location to add incremental revenue streams into their business. And that's something that we're helping a ton of restaurants uncover and realize their potential. And it's done amazing things for these restaurants that are embracing it. I would take a hard look at thinking about launching additional concepts or bringing in more brands into your existing operation with the same fixed overhead that you have. Rent is fixed, the lights are already on, the staff is already there. You might as well run multiple restaurants out of your same business.
I was thinking as you were talking too, how do we get fresh food to people's doorsteps, right? I think back when I was a child, when Mr. Softy came around, we knew we were going to get ice cream right at our doorstep, right? And now we introduced a couple, several years ago, the food truck business, which is booming, right? It still is. Now I can envision in the next year or two, right, some music going off and all the adults running to their doors saying, oh, I don't know, Chipotle's coming, or Subway's coming, right? And run out there and we get our food, right, delivered. I mean, it's not impossible anymore. I mean, we would have talked about this last year. We would have laughed about it, but it's sort of like, we're going to be living, years ago, we looked at the cartoon, The Jetsons, right? And how futuristic and far-fetched it was. Right now, hey, listen, we may be living like the Jetsons in a few years, in certain ways. So, obviously a lot of these restaurants out there aren't equipped, and their cuisine, you just can't sell it on a food truck. So obviously there's a lot of restaurants that won't work for, but it's interesting to see how, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops too. And I'm eager to see all these creative ways that restaurants are coming out with to get the food fresh to the door. There's new things popping up every day. There's new concepts, new stories. So here's a question too. So have any restaurateurs out there had to, maybe they were at capacity with their outside dining, right? And now here comes a storm, right? All of a sudden it starts downpouring rain, and you have all these diners outside, right? You can't just rush them all inside, right? Because they may not have masks because they weren't equipped. They didn't go there with their masks. So now what do? And say, hey, sorry guys, just hold out. You're gonna have to get soaked and wet, right? Your dishes may get ruined, but hey, I'll be back out when it stops raining. And then the waiter or waitress goes in the establishment. Any horror stories like that?
I could actually speak to that. So this weekend, my wife and I were out on the east end of Long Island celebrating her birthday, and we were dining at a outside on a dock, and there's storm clouds overhead, and it started to just a little bit of raindrops. And some of the staff came around and they said, in the event that it starts to downpour, we have masks provided so you can run inside and take shelter from the storm. Now, this restaurant is a fine dining establishment. I'm not going to drop names, but it's a very expensive restaurant, small indoor capacity. And their game plan was, if it starts to pour, kind of just shelter in place with the mask we provide you, and we'll kind of figure out what we can with your fine dining cuisine. And it's tough because what are really the options? What options do you have? Because a lot of restaurants may not have the space for it. And there's a lot of fear of people dining indoors because unlike New York City where you can't dine indoors, on Long Island you can. But a lot of restaurants, either one, aren't providing indoor dining, or two, you walk past the restaurants that do have it and there's no one in there. There's a lot of fear with dining indoors. I think there's a comfort in being able to dine outside. And once you take that away, it's a daunting opposition. And this restaurant in Point, unfortunately, they're not set up for it. Case in point with what their game plan is. And I think a lot of restaurants may be in that position. So that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. So if there's anyone out there who's had to encounter that thus far, if they could share some of their stories with it, I'm sure it would be greatly appreciated to others here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it happens every time it rains. So you're checking the radar and you're managing the guest expectation. You're telling the kitchen, we got 15 minutes before it's going to thunderstorm, get those entrees out. You're seating strategically and it's managing a restaurant.
But yeah, right. And I guess leads to my next question. Seasonal. Here comes the fall. Here comes the winter time. Yeah, right now it rains. Hey, it'll feel good, right? What happens fall, winter time, right? We're going to have this outdoor seating. We're going to have electricity out there maybe, or we're going to have heated lamps. What happens if it starts pouring rain or snowing, for that matter? Obviously, yeah, you have to look at the weather, but we've all known that the weatherman or weatherwoman, to be politically correct, is sometimes they're wrong, right? All of a sudden it'll start hailing outside, golf balls. What are you supposed to do when you're outside dining? I think obviously there's probably not answers right now, but this is the stuff we got to think about now, folks. It's craziness, but.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your lease negotiation. How are you managing this? And October 15th is probably that day. You got a few more good days left in New York. You're either shutting down, or you're figuring something out. I mean, that's why we've only opened out of 14 places. We've only opened 3 of them. And we're slow rolling it, just buying time, and we're working with our landlords to figure out the best way to pay rent and work together as a team. Most of them are working with us, some of them aren't, but at the end of the day, we're kind of all in this together, right? And managing the money as best we can, whatever money's left.
It looks like we have over 50 participants on this webinar. I would love to say that is one state representative from each state out there listening, right? We would love to have certain influential people out there that are really going to go up to bat for restaurants and bars, right? Something needs to be done. More needs to be done, right? Some states are being proactive. They're doing certain things and providing hazard pay and all this other stuff. But hey, more has to be done. If anyone's listening out there, if anybody knows anybody high up the chain, this is an industry that needs assistance. I mean, yeah, of course, we can't discount the medical profession because they are at the front lines, right? But the restaurants are right behind them. We got to feed, these individuals, right? We have to remain open because people still want to eat, and for people that historically have eaten out at restaurants, they're still going to do it. They're just going to do it in a different way.
It's not just feeding people too. We employ 30 million people in the workforce, 7 of which were laid off over the last 5 months. This is much more than the restaurant industry at this point. It's having massive economic impacts that are, I read a stat that 30% of people didn't pay or paid a percentage of their mortgage in July. That's it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah, that's an excellent point too, and we'll get into that in a bit. I have some interesting questions and comments to share regarding staffing as well. But you're right. We employ people, a lot of people that enjoy working in the food and beverage industry. They look at it as their livelihood. It's their career. We have waiters and waitresses and bartenders. That's a career, folks. The misconception from a lot of people out there is, these waiters and waitresses and these servers and bartenders, maitre d's, or whatever you want to call them, it's not just a job to them. A lot of them, it's their career. So, they need to get paid. If they don't get paid, like you said, Alex, with the unemployment, but now unemployment's running out too, right? States are going to be getting into the issue of, hey, we don't have any more money. That's another concern too. So, but at the same time, we have to figure out how to make some money. The states need to have to figure out how you manufacture some money, right? You have to go up to the government, U.S. government. Hey, listen, we need more money. I don't think enough's being done right now.
Yeah, I think I just want to jump in here real quick. I think you guys are hitting on some fantastic topics, and while we're on the staffing topic too, we've had some questions about some of this stuff as well coming through. What do you guys? I mean, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Obviously, there's a massive amount of people that are in that rely on these jobs and stuff, but also we've heard and some people are asking about, well, what happens? Now that people have heard stories of a lot of restaurants are having trouble actually finding employees. Like I know people here in Pittsburgh who own pizza shops and stuff that are doing pretty well because they're set up for delivery, but they can't find people to work because they're able to collect just as much, if not more money in unemployment doing nothing. So some of the restaurants that are doing well, it's like they're they actually can't really find workers in a sense right now. Obviously that might change, but have you guys, Terrence, like Alex, have you guys run into any of those issues too, or have you guys seen any of that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier that exact scenario, and it's something that a lot of restaurants are struggling with, is bringing people back. But luckily, there's a huge pool of people who are also interested in working that are not employed right now. So there's a lot of resources for hiring kitchen staff and busboys and employees. But if the uninsured benefits continue to be high, it's going to be harder to get people to come back to work. I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty of what's going to happen there, but it's definitely something that we talk about.
One method that I've seen, particularly here on the East End of Long Island, is what they're coining as a posh picnic. So some restaurants that are having great difficulty bringing back their staff, what they're doing is they're taking the server and the customer service component out of it by setting up a window, if you will, where your customer will walk up to, order their food, and it's packaged to go. And they would have the outdoor dining set up and everything's there. So you take all the food out, you sit at a table, and you eat at their location. Now, again, I'm seeing this primarily at locations that are waterside or locations that are known for their view. So that's one component they're kind of utilizing because of lack of ability to get staff in. So they are running with less staff, and they are incentivizing those employees to be there through extra wages and so forth. But again, now that experience is being greatly affected because yes, we do go to restaurants to eat, but we also go for that experience, that customer service, the interaction, and that's affected. So it is one method that is, again, being utilized quite a lot, again, on East End of Long Island. But what is that experience? Is that something that people will go back to? To be honest, I've experienced it several locations, and it is nice because you're there and you kind of are outdoors and you are enjoying it, but it does take a lot away from it. So I know the employees don't like it, and the customers themselves are mixed reviews. But again, that's just one method that we're seeing here.
We laid off 850 people on March 15th. So, and obviously we all thought this is going to be a few weeks and we'll be right back, right? So, and then obviously, all these kind of things started happening where you wanted to, liability and how do you, employee practices and the WARN Act, right? And sending out notices. And so then I started to begin calling all of the former employees, and I'm still actually trying to go through that list. And so for the past few weeks, I've basically, anybody that has set up a call, told them, if you could get a job, you should look for a job. And if we need help, we're going to call you if you're able to work, because that $600 is going to run out. It's going to run out. If it didn't already, it's going to run out. And then there's going to be a few million people now looking for work. So, just be smart about it. And, but again, it goes back to, we've kind of changed our tip policy at our tip pool. So, the first few weeks of opening at Bungalow Bar and the Refinery Rooftop or Park Avenue Tavern, it was a shared house where the front of house only, because in New York, you're not allowed to share with the back of house, which is something that we're kind of trying to change, where the bartenders, servers, barbacks, runners, basically it's one pooled house. And then we'll change it as from week to week. That flexibility and adaptability is really important in this kind of current climate. So, and also with their wages, it helped with their wages.
It's a good point. It all gets down to communication and having an open dialogue with your employees. I mean, this is something we've always preached, even before COVID-19. Management should have open dialogue with their employees. I'm not talking about friendships, folks. I'm talking about, hey, listen, if an employee is going above and beyond, you need to make sure that employees recognize, whether it be, hey, job well done, I think you're doing a great job, or it be monetary compensation, bonus, whatever. right? Even during COVID-19 too, if we're doing it smartly, folks, those rock star employees that are out there that have always been there for the restaurant, they go above and beyond. I mean, as soon as they walk in, they have all their diners waiting for them, right, per request, right? They have their book of business essentially through your restaurant, right? And it's these employees that we need to focus on, because if they're great at what they did, but right now maybe you can't employ them, you need to keep an open dialogue with them. Maybe check in with them from time to time. Say, hey, listen, how are you doing out there? I know it's tough right now. You know, that's if you can't hire them back. And if you can hire them back, they have to, I guess it's on us to make sure that they realize, hey, listen, $600 a week is only a Band-Aid, you know? And like I said before too, a lot of these individuals, it's their career, right? So the Band-Aid's gonna come off and eventually you're gonna have to hire them back. So, hey, listen, you need to keep open dialogue with them, because, you know, these employees are gonna realize, hey, this is only temporary. You're a rock star, you're part of this business, you're gonna come back, stick with us, right? And it's all about that communication.
There was a question about front of house and back of house transitioning to or similar jobs, and anybody that's familiar with New York obviously knows it's a very tough labor market here with labor laws. It's very similar to California, the 80-20 rule and such. So obviously, again, there is a lot of empathy for the industry right now. So we're petitioning the state and the city to get rid of the 80-20 rule and have potentially gratuity or a service charge or an upcharge where we're able to share those tips or service charges with back of house. So then we could share responsibilities of back of house and front of house, because at the end of the day, we're all doing the same job, which is serving that guest in the best possible way we can.
Yeah.
So just asking that question.
For sure. I'm glad I was just about to bring that up because I think it's important. And the other thing too that, you know, Kenneth brought up with the question is, you know, for the people who can't get jobs back at restaurants doing the stuff they were doing, have you seen other industries or what maybe other hospitality related jobs that are of demand right now that maybe they can start applying for if someone has lost their job or they're trying to transition out of restaurants and things and they can't get a job? Have you recommended any, with the employees and stuff that you've been talking to or other people, have you been recommending, hey, jump into this industry? I'm seeing a lot of jobs, you know, a lot of people are hiring in this, you know, as options.
We've told some employees to drive for Uber or drive for one of these delivery services just because it's the gig economy where you can turn on your wheel at your own hours. It's temporary. There's no monthly commitment. And the message that we let our employees know when we let them go was, the second that we're able to bring you guys back, you're the first phone call we're going to make. So stand by and don't go get anything too serious, because we're going to get you back in here as soon as we can. And very quickly we realized that a growing percentage of our order volume started shifting to phone orders, people calling in. And we realized that the best people to handle those phone orders were actually waiters. So bringing in waiters to guide those people, it's like taking the order instead of in person, it's over the phone. You're guiding them through the menu, you're recommending upsells, you're very knowledgeable on how to say, you know, what comes with what. And so we actually brought back a couple waiters just to answer the phones, because most of the phone orders coming in were actually people just calling ahead to place orders. So that's kind of a creative way that you can repivot resources to make the most out of what's going on.
One other thing I was thinking of too is, you know, everybody's on Facebook, right? All of us are probably on Facebook. If we say we're not, we are, right? So especially our employees, right? Employees go on Facebook, they have friends and family, they have individuals that aren't friends and family, right? And what used to cost restaurants and businesses tens of thousands of dollars in advertising and marketing campaigns, spending some big money. Hey, listen, this is organic marketing. You know, if you have employees that are those rock star employees, maybe you can't take back right now, you know, maybe offer them some sort of incentive too. And again, folks, brainstorming. Maybe, hey, say, listen, get on Facebook and promote the restaurant for us, right? And, maybe offer them, I don't know, certain bonus or certain sort of compensation for anyone they refer to the restaurant and they end up ordering takeout through the restaurant, right? So it's for their favorite diners that come in and ask for them, right? You still maintain that relationship, and now you have organic marketing. Instead of costing you tens of thousands of dollars in a marketing company, now you're taking those employees that are sitting at home doing nothing, right? Gathering a paycheck, and maybe you can at least have them, hey, promote your restaurant for you, because if they're dedicated employees, they're going to want to see your restaurant succeed. I don't know if that's a far-fetched idea or what people think about that, but that's just a thought I had. Because like I said too, you have to think about what these individuals are doing, right? Even as business owners, we should be doing that too, right? Now, we're facing reduced hours. I had a restaurant client in my accounting firm business that, before COVID-19 hit, she said, "Oh man, Will, I gotta, anybody that good marketing company, I want to try to do things at the restaurant. I just don't have time." Fast forward a couple months, she's like, hey, Will, my restaurant's going to fail due to COVID-19. What should I do? Hey, remember back in November when you were asking me about that marketing firm? Well, you could be that marketing firm. This day and age, it's real easy to get on social media and think about some things. Think about how you want to rebrand your restaurant. And it's just that communication and a dialogue. People just need a little guidance. We need guidance as business owners. We need to talk to others that are kind of working parallel to us in the field. Because sometimes, we have that one-track mind where, oh my God, we're going to fail. Hey, folks, step aside and keep going down that track. There's solutions out there. There's more opportunities out there. Kind of, get a little inventive.
There was a question about incentivizing your staff, and I would obviously, if there's any attorneys, you should confer with them. But I would say that they would have to hit like the minimum salary threshold. But I would also say in these times, what profit? So what profit sharing would you be doing with them? So just be careful setting up anything that you potentially wouldn't be able to fulfill on some sort of bonus structure. But yes, in the past we've set those up as far as bonuses go with management. We haven't done that with hourly because of just classifications of employees. So just, I would speak to an attorney about that.
Yeah, and what Terence is referring to, there's non-discriminatory rules out there, folks. Talk to your, attorney or even CPA about that, because if you're gonna, you have to be careful. If you're gonna hire one person, or if you're gonna offer one person some incentive compensation, there's others out there that you're gonna have to make that offer to as well, too. So you can't, you can't be biased in that decision. So you gotta make sure you know what the rules are, and it's the federal level and at the state level. So make sure if it's an option, just make sure you know the rules.
As far as like the BBOT question is phone apps. I mean, Alex probably answer better, but me being biased, I'm an investor with BBOT. We liked BBOT because they, just like Seven Rooms, they looked at us as the restaurant as the customer, not the consumer as the customer. So it was all about the integrations and how many integrations we can, kind of tie in and making it as seamless as possible for us as well as the consumer. Do I think it's going to be going that way as much as possible? Well, it's really difficult because the market share of Grubhub and Postmates and all those things to kind of counteract the marketability of those things against you on the websites and such. But it's a fight and struggle every day to convert those customers to your website or calling and such. So, but we try to do it every day.
It's not just a struggle, it's actually against the terms of service. In some situations, you're not actually allowed to market to the customers that Grubhub brings you. And even if it was a choice, in most cases, it's not even possible because they anonymize the data. They just give you the first letter of the last name, no phone number, or a temporary fake 24-hour phone number. They don't give you any email information. So I hear so many restaurants talking about, we got to own the customer and we got to like create our own strategy to get people to go to our own website. And I think that it's a very important piece of the puzzle, but you as a restaurant cannot change consumer behavior. And the reality is that these online ordering companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to acquire customers and have people open their app when they're hungry. And if you're not listed on these platforms, you just simply don't exist to the people who use them. So rather than trying to fight the good fight, have your own direct channel, make sure that people can get to you directly, have direct ordering on your own website. But that's part of a multi-channel strategy where you have to also be using these ordering channels. And that includes beyond just the Uber Eats and Postmates of the world, but some of the voice ordering, Alexa ordering, car ordering is becoming a thing. Basically, if you look up all the ways that you can order a Domino's pizza, that's about to, I think there's 15 or 19 different ways, channels that you can order from. That's about to enter every single restaurant. Every restaurant now has the ability to have the same technology as Domino's because there's all these companies and services that are making it possible for mom and pops to participate. And don't sit back and let yourself become irrelevant. You got to stay 2 steps ahead of whatever's happening. And Alexa ordering and Google ordering, Apple's going to be rolling out ordering most likely. And you need to be able to capture wherever people want to find you, let them buy from you.
That's right. That's right. It's an interesting, even without, the coronavirus, there's what I guess the followers that restaurants had maybe 10, 15 years ago has changed significantly from then till now. A lot of diners are strictly using apps to find the restaurant to eat at. They're just going on social media to find out which restaurants are hot, right? If they have to travel to a different state, let's say, although now, it's far in between there, but, I'm an avid user of an app, right? So if I ever go away out for business, hey, I'm in Chicago. What's the best place to eat Mexican? And I'll search, right? And I'll only look for the restaurants with 4 and above stars, right? So what happens to that restaurant that has a 3.8 star rating, may have 600 reviews, right? The restaurant may think that, hey, that's a great, it's above average. But hey, listen, a lot of individuals like me, when we're going to search for 4 and above, guess what? That restaurant's not even going to be in that search. So they can have, and then most of those low ratings, maybe they got a couple 1 stars, 3 stars, and they have dropped out a bit. Maybe that's when they first opened 10 years ago, right? But due to the algorithms, they're still on there, and it still affects the average. So it's just like your credit score, but it doesn't go away after 7 years, right? So what's going to happen to these restaurants that are now outperforming all the other restaurants, but they're not going to meet that 4 and above star rating. I think we need to focus on that as restaurants now and see what these other platforms are saying about your restaurant. Get on these other platforms if you're not on them, because like Alex just said, you have to stay relevant. And I think a lot of restaurants are going to fail because they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit anymore. And that's what we have to try to, instill in our, obviously CAT's future clients is, hey, listen, there's hope. There's a path to success still. This is how you do it, right? We may not have all the answers right away, but that's why we need to, communicate and see what's good. Maybe you have to change your approach. Maybe you have to change your cuisine, which leads me into the next. I think we covered staffing, so I guess the last subtopic here would be menu modifications, right? Maybe you need to change your cuisine. What are steakhouses doing, right? So, for these steakhouses out there that had these, kick-ass, mind my language, steaks out there, right? And they were known for their steaks. They were known for their, filet of Oscar with gravy on top. You get a filet of Oscar, take it home. I tell you right now, it's not going to be half as good as it be in a restaurant. I wouldn't want to order a filet Oscar, take it home. I want to eat it right at the restaurant when it comes out, right? And plus, I like my steak medium rare, so it's going to be medium well by the time it gets home, probably, right? So, what are you seeing, guys and girls, in terms of what are hot ticket items right now? What's selling at your restaurants? What's not selling? And maybe what are consumers complaining about? Maybe it's soggy fries or wilted lettuce or meat not being cooked properly.
One thing that's happened recently is that restaurants and grocery stores are combining and becoming one. You know, there's this new term called groceurant, which is basically a restaurant that is selling items that they normally would not sell, which could be a dozen eggs, a pound of sliced cheddar cheese, you know, 12-pack of raw burgers. They're basically, people are turning to their local restaurants to go buy milk. And the restaurants that are accommodating that, it's actually working really well right now. As far as delivery menus go, you have to consider tailoring down your menu to items that you know are going to sell well, that don't take long to make, and that have lower food costs. When you look at fine dining, you mentioned steakhouses. We work with about 100 different steakhouses across the country that are doing just fine on delivery. Not trying to do exactly what they used to do in-house, but focusing on the burgers and salads and stuff on the menu that actually makes sense for delivery, and selling a steak sandwich instead of, you know, a bunch of different kinds of steak. You got to get creative right now. There's restaurants in LA right now where every time you place an order of $50 or more, they throw a free roll of toilet paper in your bag. It was kind of gimmicky when it first started, but it actually got a ton of media attention, and it became a hot news story, and people were just ordering it because it was funny and different, and it worked really well. But now is the moment to really think about what you can offer, and basket size is growing significantly. The average basket size on delivery pre-COVID was about $26. Now it's close to $31. Catering as a category is destroyed. There's no more catering. And for businesses that were relying on, you know, a significant chunk of their business being catering, it becomes a very different mindset. You can add party packs, so that you can do like a taco kit for 10 people on these delivery apps. It's kind of like mini catering. More like family packs and family size meals, but with no events in the near future, it's really time to not try to make what you were doing before work, but really just adapt and be innovative in rethinking what your business needs today.
You know, you mentioned an interesting, you mentioned sandwiches. That's excellent. You know, steak sandwiches. I'm a sucker for steak sandwiches. And you know, one thing that I really like that this restaurant does, it's right next to our accounting office. It's Oakmont Barbecue. They established a brick and mortar store shop called Off the Rails Barbecue. And the first time I ordered a barbecue sandwich, it was not really a kit, but it was, you know, in a to-go container. They have a fresh baked roll cut on the side. Then they have their meat in another container. Then they have their sauce in another container. Then they may have their coleslaw in another. So you can get back to your office or home and put that sandwich together, and it's fresh, right? You don't get home and maybe the bread is soggy from the au jus or you know, from the coleslaw, and maybe it's not all like melded together, right? And you know, it's great. It's again, it's the small things that are already setting them apart from the competition. You know, historically, you know, no one likes to get home and have soggy bread. It's the worst tasting food ever. I mean, unless you're intentionally dipping it in something, soggy bread is not good. You know, unless you're trying to feed it to your 1-year-old, right? But that's a good example of how, you know, steakhouses can think outside the box, right? Sandwiches. You know, historically, you're not going to sell your filet of Oscars. It's not going to be a hot ticket item. You know, your Delmonico steaks, you're not going to be selling Delmonico steaks right now. You're not. I mean, if someone wants to order one, like you said, hey, maybe they want it raw. Bring it home and cook it if they really want a steak. But that's an interesting concept, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, and the one final comment on that, just bringing back in the virtual restaurant conversation. I launched a virtual restaurant out of Canter's Deli, my family business, called Grilled Cheese Heaven. It's a limited menu of 10 grilled cheese sandwiches, ingredients that we already had in the kitchen, something that cost us 10 to 15% food cost. Could be $1 or $1.50 to make it. We sell it for 10 or 12 bucks. And I uploaded this menu onto Uber Eats and DoorDash and Postmates, had it come through the same device, the Ordermark device that was already in our kitchen. And we turned on an extra 20 to 30 orders per day, which was like adding an extra $250,000 a year in sales to the family business. Again, no additional overhead. We didn't have to hire any additional labor. We were using exactly the same stuff that we were already there doing. And the second that we did that and launched that, I went back to my dad and we were talking about what was happening, and he was like, let's do burgers now. He was already on to the next concept. So, whether you're already in the virtual restaurant space or operating in a ghost kitchen or a cloud kitchen, even if you're focused on your own brand and that's like your big initiative, it doesn't mean you can't layer in these additional incremental revenue streams through virtual restaurants.
That's great. And it sounds like you're leveraging bread and cheese to make it into a hot ticket item. And it all depends on, how you're putting that bread and cheese together, what you're doing to the bread, what you put cheese on. It's your methodology. And in a way it's art, right? You give 2 slices of bread and 2 slices of cheese to 3 different people, right? And tell them to do something with it. You're going to get 3 different sandwiches, right? And it's that sandwich that people like the most that they're going to come back to. And it sounds like you're succeeding in that, because if it's good as it sounds like, I would spend $10, especially now, to get a fresh, nice grilled cheese. Who doesn't like grilled cheese? I mean, come on, especially, if it's during this time when, you may not want to order a chicken dinner to take out. I would definitely order a grilled cheese. So interesting concept. And again, we all get back to, we want to focus on what sells the most. And I think obviously, Alex, you're doing that, right? What are you're kind of staying ahead of the competition. You're being innovative. I think that's what we got to do. If we just sit back and say, this will pass, more and more restaurants are going to fail. So I guess it leads to the second to last topic, technology, right? So we've all seen, I've seen a lot of crazy advertisements on whether it be Instagram, a sponsored post, drones delivering food, right? Various mobile apps, right? These mobile apps need to be reliable. They need to be, it all has to do with timing, accuracy, and efficiency, right? If these mobile apps fail, it's going to do the restaurant service. So these restaurateurs are forced to rely on third-party businesses, right, on their technology to get their food out to these consumers, these diners, and innovative packaging maybe, right? Or maybe there's some new, Cath Advisory Group, we sponsored a short, I guess, kind of infomercial with a packaging company that's kind of innovating the way restaurants are using packaging, right? There's branding that can go into your packaging. You can be creative there and think, I don't know, maybe you can get, how now they have you can get your personalized M&Ms, right? Hey, well, now you can get your personalized ketchup packets, right? You could have, I don't know, Al's crazy wacky tacos. You can get your name and brand on each hot sauce package like Taco Bell does, right? So you think about those little things, and those little things are going to set you off from the competition. So, but what are you folks doing out there in terms of technology? What are you seeing? What has worked for you? Like, maybe there's something out there that, I'm going to try this out. Not sure how it's going to pan out. And maybe you realize, wow, it worked out pretty darn well. Any stories like that?
Being that we were 850 employees and we went down to 6, what we did was we tried to stay relevant as we could, right? And So we did a family fund of feeding hospitality workers every day. As far as like on the tech side, I mean, we just relied on Grubhub and you know, tried to convert what we could to our own platform, and then tried to do packages. I mean, again, like I said, it's not rocket science. I know that there's a question about seated. We just launched seated at the refinery rooftop. And again, why we do seated is to fill the gaps where we, where it's soft and where it's slow. So seated is an app that potentially could help us where filling those Mondays or Sundays that we can, you know, leverage better. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's been very hard when you don't have the marketing team that you had, where it was 4 or 5 people. It's now the development person handling the Instagram, you know, the one person that stuck around, that stayed with you through quarantine.
Awesome. And I guess what leads me into the last topic, you know, what are we doing for the future? I mean, you know, what are we going to have to still do, right? And you know, I've seen advertisements out there for kind of customized partition walls, right, to put up in your indoor dining now, right? Every dining section is going to have a wall between it, right? And hey, there's also pods out there, right? Futuristic pods that, and, you know, like I said, 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we watched the Jetsons, right? People were sitting inside a pod eating dinner, right? And the window would open and then the food would just shoot in, right? We're not so far off from those times anymore, folks, you know? So you know, we may have to adapt in that regard too. You know, they have to go with the decor of your restaurant.
Yeah, for us, I think during these uncertain times, you always look at what stays the same, and for us, what stays the same is people want familiarity. So don't change too much, and that's what we want to focus on. Like, we don't want to flip the apple cart here, because this potentially is going to be gone in a year and a half, 2 years again. And if somebody really wants to eat in a bubble wrap, they don't want to eat in our restaurant. So there's ways to potentially manage this problem that we have. Wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask, ventilation, all of the things that Fauci and the team is saying we have to do. We should do them. But, you know, to do like the crazy, you know, things that you're seeing on Instagram, we're not going to go and do them. It's just not worth it. I'd rather close and wait it out and spend some time with my kids.
One thing that I'll share is, I think there's a lot of technology coming in the digital ordering or digital menu side of things. I've seen a lot of QR code, bring your own device, pay on your phone, pull up the menu happening. I think that's a nice option for people. And you can still have a waiter come by and walk you through the menu, but just say, you know, if you want to order, just you do it through your own phone. And I think you want to give people optionality, and there's still going to be a group of people that are going to wear masks even when this is done, just like they do all over Asia. And people who are not going to want to touch menus that have been touched by 100 other people that same day. So giving people the option to have either, here's a physical menu, here's a throw out paper menu that you can have, or you can actually just scan this thing on your phone and order yourself. I think giving optionality to the consumer is going to go a long way. You want to be accommodating to whatever makes them safe and feel comfortable to come in to your restaurant.
No, that's a good point. You know, I guess I had some other minor points here. You know, there's probably some restaurants out there that had to maybe increase costs. That they have increased costs due to supply and demand, and therefore they had to increase their prices. You know, I always think, okay, you know, in that regard, are they also decreasing the portion sizes is all? Hopefully it's and not both, right? Because if you have to pay more for less, that initial surprise by your diner could lose you a consumer, right? So if costs are going up, we have to think as restaurant owners, what's the best way to translate this into providing diners with food and beverage? Do we just increase cost, leave the portions the same, or maybe do we increase the portions, right? Maybe we have to charge $2 more, but what do we give them? Obviously, we won't give them 2 times more food, but maybe we increase the portion sizes. And if we're going to do something, folks, that we think is going to please the diners, we should relay that message to the public. Hey, listen, due to increased costs, we're increasing our prices. However, you get more food with an exclamation point, right? We have to make sure that if they're going to see something clearly on your menu, hey, prices went up, you got to also hopefully show them, hey, prices went up. However, give them something else. We have to like balance that expectation, right? You know, give them something else. You know, maybe it's a discount in the future. I don't know. I mean, these are all things we're forced to deal with now for the first time that we haven't had to deal with in the past. So,
one thing that I'll add. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, you touched upon it before, Alex. There's been a saturation of restaurants in this country, and the cost of food in this country has been so deflated, and that this correction here is not going to be such a bad thing, hopefully over the long term. And where, yeah, it's expensive to run a restaurant, and it's expensive to run a deli, and the public is going to have to get used to these costs rising. Whether it's you want minimum wage hikes, then this is what we need to do. You want equity across the board, this is what we're going to have to do. We want to pay our day laborers, farmers more. This is what we need to do. So, which is all great things, but also on the flip side, we have to correct the real estate market, especially where we are in Manhattan. But I'm sure it's trickled into other urban areas that there's cheap money out there. There's inflated prices, inflated real estate based off of our hospitality projections that these rents are supposed to be, paying. And I believe that there's, that there's a bubble there. And so that's the correction that's going to be coming as well. I'm sorry, a bar restaurant can't afford to pay $220 a square foot. I don't care where you are. And that kind of pressure on the operator is ridiculous. I mean, that's why you're going to see a ton of places, VC backed, are going to be going out of business.
And kitchens and restaurants in general are going to get smaller. I think that the square footage of the future restaurant is a half or a third of the size of what it is now. There's no longer going to be a need for the same seating capacity as more and more orders shift to digital and takeout. And from a pricing perspective on delivery specifically, the online ordering platforms used to make it illegal and impossible to inflate your prices compared to how they are in your in-store menu. But as of about a year and a half ago, they all kind of caved in and said, you know what, increase your prices by 10%, 15%, whatever you need to do, because we're taking 30% off the top anyway, so it helps us even more. But what's great for you as a restaurant is like you can now have inflated delivery prices. People are totally willing to pay more for convenience on these apps. So don't be afraid to charge $18 for a $15 sandwich. It's not out of the question.
Good point. Good point. I think we covered all our main points. I think it's 7:30.
Yeah. I know we gotta wrap up here. There's a couple, and thank you guys so much for this conversation. I want to be, aware of your time, and we appreciate you guys taking the time out of your days. And I know you all have a lot going on, obviously, and this conversation was fantastic. There's a few things from questions coming in I want to hint on real quick, or at least get Terence and Alex your perspective on a few things. You mentioned earlier ghost kitchens and this stuff. So that, if you can, for people who are unfamiliar, maybe dive a little bit deeper into that real quick. I think it seems like, Alex, you're pretty familiar with this. And then the other thing too that we touched on a little bit is this, like the other industries that are affected by this, mainly the suppliers. Like, so what happens to the supply chain, the manufacturers, all of the food supply, like all the other people that are affected, like down the line, farmers, other stuff. Have you guys seen any effects on that, or things going forward in those regards? And then also there's a question about insurance too, with like the changes to delivery stuff. Like, are people now having to get out new insurance policies to cover drivers and all sorts of different things? So insurance, supply chain, and then also the ghost kitchens. And then I think that pretty much covers everything that anyone wanted to know.
I can start with the ghost kitchen piece. So for those of you that are not familiar, there's this new emergence of basically modern commissary kitchens that are just these buildings that are designed to house a number of different small kitchens that are designed for delivery and catering and takeout only. No customer facing piece traditionally, although some of the new ghost kitchen facilities are a hybrid where people can walk in and order but no dine-in. Some of the bigger brands doing this in the space are Cloud Kitchens, Kitchen United, Reef Kitchens, Zool in New York, Colony here in LA. And this is something that's been pretty popular for a while in Southeast Asia, places like India. It's kind of exploded all over Europe, and the US is kind of late to the game. But basically, it's an opportunity to run a very efficient delivery only, takeout only business where you've got a room that's no bigger than, call it 10 by 15 feet. You got a bunch of kitchen equipment lined on every wall and 2 staff members working to basically fulfill orders for takeout and delivery, specifically through third-party marketplaces. That's usually the apps that are producing the volume, but some people are choosing to do self-delivery out of these as well. It's a way to offload your delivery business out of your existing restaurant if you don't want to run both operations out of one building or one unit. And it's also being used to expand your delivery footprint beyond the 3-mile delivery radius of your normal restaurant. So for Canters, we opened up a ghost kitchen in Pasadena, which is way further east of where our location is in LA, just to service the delivery radius of that area. And the rent is a lot smaller. The overhead cost to get started is much better than starting a regular restaurant. And we only had 2 or 3 staff members working every day out of this kitchen doing 100 delivery orders a day. So it's a very efficient setup for a delivery business. And it's definitely becoming this growing category for new restaurants. So instead of opening up a whole brick and mortar and having the expensive, crazy rent in the front of house, you could really just focus on the delivery and takeout experience with a very efficient operation. However, there are break-even points and minimum thresholds that you have to hit to make it profitable. So you got to really have something that's working in delivery to make it happen. And then I'll quickly touch on the delivery driver insurance piece. A lot of restaurants are trying to do their own delivery program and bring delivery in-house, hiring their own drivers or repurposing staff to become drivers. It is a very, very overly expensive approach to delivery. One of the best parts about Uber Eats and these companies is that they deliver the food for you. And if 10 orders come in 10 minutes, they're going to send 10 drivers to come pick it up. If no orders come in for a 3-hour stretch, you don't have, you're not wasting someone's time sitting there waiting to deliver food. So because there's such intense volume spikes for lunch and dinner rush, and then a huge lag in between and before, it does become very expensive with additional insurance costs and minimum wage to have in-house drivers, something that pizza and Chinese food used to do in the past. And you need to have insane volume to justify it and make it worth it. And most of the chains and restaurants that have tried to go out and do this themselves end up killing the program after a year because they just find that it's not working out the way they wanted it to. and they could just rely on these big networks out there to do it for them. And in places like New York and LA, there's also great last mile delivery networks. Like in New York, there's Relay.
Relay.
And every city has their own version of a Relay. There's all these RDS partners, restaurant delivery services, that will do the last mile for you. You ping them whenever you get an order. They come and send someone to pick up the food for you. So if you're diving in to do self-delivery, I would start to look at alternative options.
That's awesome. Thanks, Alex. I think everyone listening learned a lot just from you and Terence alone. Hopefully, everyone got some good advice, maybe some clarity on a few things. Maybe we're going to go back and implement some of these things we talked about today. But keep in mind, obviously we don't have all the answers right now. And like I said before, we're all in this for the first time. Nothing like this and this magnitude has ever happened before. It's a wacky world. It's a wacky world, and it's a wacky thing that happened to a wacky industry, right? It's always been a wacky industry, and then this comes along. So we all stick together more so than ever, share success stories and horror stories together, and make sure that we're either mirroring what to do or what not to do.
I would suggest one thing that we did was we put all of our delivery platforms, and we ran out of Parker and Quinn. So we had all of our 10 restaurant concepts open for delivery, and basically ghost kitchens all running out of that single restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, and then opened up our delivery radius much wider in Manhattan. And so if any operators have a bunch of restaurant concepts and are potentially facing shutdowns in their urban areas, shut down to one restaurant and then use Bbot or any of the platforms that you have to bring it to that one kitchen, and then use a Relay or even Grubhub. They all go to that one kitchen. So coordinate to that one kitchen. So you don't even need to do a ghost kitchen if you already have the concepts in place.
I look at every restaurant in America as a kitchen that has extra capacity, even if it's during certain hours. So to your point, you don't necessarily need a separate kitchen to run delivery out of if you've got one that's already underutilized. And particularly during different day parts, if there's slower times, or we have restaurants that we work with that normally close at 10 p.m., but they've now decided to keep a staff member there from 10 p.m. to 3 in the morning, just doing a virtual restaurant concept for the last 5 hours of the night to service the late night crowd. And that's something that you can totally do. You can control the hours of a virtual restaurant brand, and just leverage the excess kitchen capacity that you already have in your restaurant.
Good point. Okay, Mike, any other interesting questions out there? What do we have? 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on a lot of it. I also want to be, cautious, just aware of everyone's time and stuff. So I think we're good.